Hello, my name is Allison Carmen, and welcome to my podcast, 10 Minutes to Less Suffering. Today, I'd like to talk to you about the thoughts that control us. I know many of us are aware that there are outside events that give us stress, that give us worry, that keep us up at night. And then people will tell us, well, it's just your thoughts. Your thoughts are keeping you up at night. And if you could control your thoughts, then you could sleep. If you can control your thoughts, then you'd be happy. While it sounds very good, sometimes it's really hard to stop thinking about things that are bothering us. And there are many things out there that help: meditation and deep breath and yoga. But it's also really good to come prepared for life, come prepared for the day or what we might face. And although we can't know what's going to happen, and usually unexpected events are the things that bother us the most, but sometimes we can prepare a little bit more for the day than we realize. What I like to do is I like to journal sometimes at the end of the day or the end of my week. And what I'll do is I'll write down situations that happen to me. And often you'll find, as you write down situations again and again, there are common themes that bother us. Some of us, it could be work. Some of us could be not knowing the future. Some of it could be our children. You kind of start to see the things that set you off the most. Then what I like to do is I like to think about the choice I have about my thought. And what I mean by this is I write down the thought that created my stress. Although it was an outer circumstance, I write down how that made me feel. And then I write down a thought that might have led me to a different place. And I remember this issue came up a lot for me after my book, The Gift of Maybe, came out. I did a lot of radio. And after a radio show, I would listen to the interview and I would think to myself, I spoke too fast. I didn't answer the question. Did people understand what I was saying? And it used to create a lot of anxiety. And the thing about radio is that you're never really going to know how people felt about the show. You could have said something that had impact. You could have said something someone disliked. Someone could have gone on your website, read a blog, bought your book. You just don't know how people feel. So one night, I was writing down all the thoughts that were practically taking me to hell. And I realized that I had a choice, that I could be narrow-minded about these interviews and look for certainty and look for feedback and be judgmental, or I could always be curious about these radio shows. I could be curious during the interview. I could be curious after the interview. Curiosity would keep my mind open. Curiosity would keep me learning. And I would be able to stay in the joy of spreading my work. So before each call, what I would do is I would choose my thought. Instead of getting uptight, I committed to being curious. And one day I had this radio interview scheduled. And when I got on the radio show, this woman started to pound me with question after question. And she kept pulling apart this idea of maybe and going deeper and deeper. And I remember having a thought, is this woman trying to trip me up? Is she trying to get me? And in that moment, instead of letting her behavior control me and letting the thought of being judged control me and the thought of judging myself control me, I committed to curiosity. And because I committed to that thought, I controlled me. And that's what happens when we start to look at what our tendencies are. We can control ourselves more. And the interview, I enjoyed it. I thought it was very expansive. And what was so interesting is a week later, my publicist called me and she put another guest on the show. And the guest actually hung up on the person that was interviewing her because she was trying to get her. She was trying to trip her up. So it's so interesting when I look back, it's that this woman, maybe she was trying to confront me or cause conflict, but because I stayed in this place of curiosity, I was able to control me and control the experience that I had. And I think in a way, I controlled the outcome more. So really, if we are aware of an alternative thought for the things that set us off, we have more of a chance of choosing it. Because when the situations outside of us control us, we're not going to sleep. We're not going to be focused on our goals. We're going to spend hours and hours and hours talking about something that really is not moving us forward. And I'm not saying that you can't process your feelings, but there are times when there is a choice of how you want to spin something, how you want to think about something, how you want to look at something. And that is very valid. And even when life seems to be going our way, we could get a new job, We could meet somebody new. All these things are happening. We could still be controlled. We could worry about what the future will bring, or there'll be a bump, or there'll be something that happens. And when we choose the thought that controls us in a negative way or doesn't serve us, we might not bring our best selves to a situation, even one that we dreamed of. And so if we could start to focus on the thoughts that control us in a very gentle, kind way, we might be able to shift things. And again, we have to process our feelings. Sometimes things are upsetting. Sometimes we get angry. But if we can know ourselves better and understand what sets us off and what thoughts bring us to misery and worry and stress, we can give ourselves another alternative. And what's so interesting is we can only give this to ourselves. Yes, we could read self-help books and people could help us with ideas, but we can create our own alternative thoughts that's suited specifically for us. And I find that is most effective. So again, what you could do is you could journal about your day. Maybe your boss wasn't nice to you. Maybe you're worried about a future project. Maybe you're worried you won't get a good job. Maybe you're worried you'll never meet somebody. Write all these thoughts down. Just start to see, is there any pattern? Is there a pattern of uncertainty? Is there a pattern of feeling frustrated, angry, lack of self-love? Is there a common theme of the things that upset you? There could be one theme, or all the things you write down could be totally unrelated. Then write down an alternative thought that could make you feel better. Let's say your boss is not nice to you. Now, of course, an alternative thought could actually be an action thought. Maybe you need to get a new job. But just to see if you could alleviate the pain and the suffering of him not liking you, of you not getting a promotion, of him hurting your feelings. What about your boss not being nice to you or saying something to you really set you off? How did it make you feel? You might, like I said, have felt bad, not worthy, not successful. Is there another thought that would make you feel different? Maybe it's always a valid thought. Maybe what he said had nothing to do with me. Maybe things will get better. Maybe I need to find a new job. So maybe it could always be an opening. Or it could be a thought like how other people act is really not personal to me. It's about them. Or when that happens, I'll acknowledge the situation, but I'm going to count my blessings. So it's a shift immediately. I'm feeling bad about work, but look at all the beautiful things I have in my life. Or when he says this to me, I don't feel loving towards myself. What's a loving thought I could have towards myself? You're starting to examine yourself, examine your mind, examine your emotions, examine your feelings. And you'd be very surprised that in the end, nobody could know you better than you. And so you could develop your own practice and give yourself alternative thoughts. And over time, you will be able to have alternative thoughts for many situations. You'll have an alternative thought towards negativity, towards fear, towards lack of accomplishments, towards lack of self-love, to dealing with uncertainty, to dealing with your kids. This is trying to unhook from the things that control us. Because what's happening is situations outside of us control us because our thoughts just fly with it. We have no space between our reaction and our response. So what's ever happening in the outside world controls our inside world. But if we give ourselves the ability to have this alternative thought and we practice it, it's like we're building a muscle. And we might not go down that black hole of feeling so upset and so miserable every day. We integrate it and it does become part of us. So I hope you give this a try. I hope you start to investigate the things that are controlling you and the thoughts that you have about them and the stress and the worry from the things that are going on in your life. And ask yourself, is there another way to think of this when this particular situation happens, when this feeling comes up? And then try it. And I guarantee if you align yourself with alternative thoughts for certain reactions that you have, it's just like going to the gym. You will build a muscle and you will find that people at work bother you less. You're less stressed. You're able to focus on your goals. You're able to have better relationships because you're giving yourself the space and the strength to make a different decision. Yes, there are things in life that hurt and there are things in life we have to process and there's suffering. But there are things in our lives that we can choose to see differently. Things that unhook the pain, things that unhook the suffering. We could have more joy in our lives than we realize and open up a little bit more to different thoughts in different ways. So each day you could live your best life. Thank you for listening to this podcast today. If you'd like to get in touch with me, you could email me at allison@allisoncarman.com. If you'd like to buy my book, The Gift of Maybe, it's available to all major bookstores and online retailers. And if you like this podcast, you could subscribe on iTunes and leave a comment.